It's quite an intriguing concept to talk about the idea of when a piece of media gains a form of a legacy. A film, series, or game that becomes so beloved from the past that it often stands the test of time for so many years from down the line of looking back on with fondness, with certain films like Back to the Future, Star Wars, Citizen Kane, Superman 78, Batman 89, and so many more. It becomes the case as well that down the line, at some point in time, you will see a new entry of the series come along that is often labeled as the legacy sequel, where projects that have been left untapped for a long time will make a return as a new entry from filmmakers, directors that have an idea to tell or return to, with films such as, Blade Runner 2049, Mary Poppins Returns, Independence Day Resurgence, Ghostbusters 2016.
4 female Ghostbusters? The feminists are taking over. I'm an adult virgin.
Creed, and the case of the series that we'll be delving into today for this review is with the globe-trotting, whip-cracking, archaeologist, Nazi-punching man of Indiana Jones. The series of this character started back in the early 80s from the envision concept created by the minds of two big names in the industry, Steven Spielberg and George Lucas, where they had teamed up with each other to create the next great action hero that will be recognized for years to come, and comes down to the character of Dr. Henry Jones, played by Harrison Ford, as he goes on these huge adventures with some unique characters as they go quest to obtain an ancient treasure that often will have some crazy outcome from it. And the process, of course, while he's on that journey, will be punching Nazis in the face. Over the course of the 1980s, saw the release of 3 movies in the series, with the classic Raiders of the Lost Ark, the slightly underwhelming but still very enjoyable prequel of Temple of Doom, and the return to form with The Last Crusade. It's got Sean Connery in it, it's just that. Besides that often forgotten TV series of Young Indiana Jones, about 2 decades later, and a lot of back and forth on making a 4th one before it arrived in the summer of 2008 with the often divisive Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and is often seen as the weakest in the series. A little while after that, there was a bit of discussion for a possible 5th film in the series, following around the time the discussion of the series Harrison Ford was also well known for was in Star Wars was getting their another crack at the new film trilogy, and it would take a while with original director Spielberg stepping back to produce a role and getting helmed by James Mangold, who made this, this little indie film called Logan. Some delays by the pandemic in form of arm and leg injury to boot, and finally, just at the middle of last year, we finally got the 5th film of the franchise of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny. It was also the first time since post-pandemic that I actually was invited to the premiere of. Yes, it's taken this long to record it, so don't at me. But the question that you maybe have wondered is if it's any good. Considering this one is a little similar in Vice Nevis the Last Entry, I would say some each have their own opinion, but honestly, I enjoyed it a lot. Not to the level of the classic trilogy, of course, but I feel it comes down to being close, and is one I'll be delving into with this review. So with any of the stories in this series, they all have a distinct focus of seeing our main lead, Dr. Jones, learning from his colleagues or from, those who crossed paths with in the past to go on a journey to a faraway land from the university that he teaches at, going on a life-threatening mission of finding a treasure, fighting Nazis and a bad guy, and spouting the important line of, "It belongs in a museum." I went from the Ark to the Covenant that melted people's faces off, a scene that's still messed up today in a visual scene that actually does hold up. A lost village treasure and a secret underground death cult. There's also a slave ring, the chalice of everlasting life, to even as far as aliens. But what is the plot and time setting for this time around? Well, let me give a little breakdown of what the plot summary is. Daredevil archaeologist Indiana Jones races across time to retrieve a legendary dial that can change the course of history. Accompanied by his goddaughter, he soon finds himself squaring off against Jürgen Voller, a former Nazi who works for NASA. So, we'll get the basic idea of the item that they are looking for being a specialized dial. We have at least a focal character joining Indy in the form of his goddaughter, a villain in a Nazi, and a time setting with NASA being named, putting us in the late 60s era. And all these points help to give an idea of where this film is set and basic plot around it of what they are looking for, and that they will have the strange powers or effects with it. I go deeper into it, but I'm not going to spoil it because I feel like it's a decent twist to the outline of it. But I think some of the plot summaries give an idea of the concept involved, and that helps to make it a little bit more of a better understandable plot instead of the last one that can be a little over the top with the amount of plot points and elements that happen in that film that either have minimal payoff told to us or never given a complete reason, where this one is kind of more focused on just the one adventure narrative, with a little backstory with some of the characters. It's simple, it's effective, and I enjoy it for what it's worth. So the story-wise, I'm gonna probably give it a 7.
Give 'em hell, Indiana Jones.
So of course, like any good or just any adventure movie, it's always good to note on the likes of the many characters joining on this quest this time around, and there is a small number of characters that I feel we'll focus on in this one, as there is a select few I can give some focus to and then provide a little bit of opinion on some, brief characters that have like a small ones. So we'll start with the main title character himself of Indiana Jones, which of course played by Harrison Ford. Now to say he has been through a lot of strange adventures would be an understatement, and you think he would have hung up the hat, jacket and whip a long time ago and settled down with his wife and son. It seems like he was looking that way until up until his goddaughter showed up and thrusted him into another adventure to find an ancient treasure. Now while it's the case that you can tell that Harrison Ford is in his early 80s, he is showing that it is not slowing him down and a bit more nuanced and better focus on action that fits someone his age. I enjoy his performance from him in his final swan song as the character. I enjoy it a fair bit more feeling that element of the classic adventures from the 80s trilogy. And I think in my own personal approach with the great send-off overall for him from the entertaining opening of the de-aged Indy, which I'll get to in presentation, with the train chase and escape the adventures in the present. It was an always enjoyable adventure with the Nazi punching archaeologists, and I think they send him off well. So next on the casting list is with the inclusion of Indy's never mentioned goddaughter in the form of Helena Shaw, who this is played by Phoebe Waller-Bridge. She connects with another character that was with Indy when they learn about the dial itself and has been continuing her late father's research and finished what drove him completely mad. Now I enjoy her character in the film. While I can see her ideals can be a bit annoying and she nearly overtakes the film from Indy and make it her own, I feel they just pull it back enough to not overbear with her. I like Phoebe Waller-Bridge, and I was disappointed that I was thinking that she would start performing like her character in Fleabag. There's going to be a point where she's going to break the fourth wall. It's like, hey guys, like and subscribe. And it was at a point that I was thinking that she was just start performing like her character. And there are elements of that in there. But I think for what it's worth, that she's a likable character, and that does have some flaws, of course, like most characters do. And I still liked her dynamic on her own and with Indy, and just it balanced out enough to make it overly annoying, and I think they're probably the best things out of this film. I like their dynamic. Next, the characters is of course with our primary villain, and one of two actors that is often typecasted as a villain in a lot of projects, and that is with Mads Mikkelsen playing our villain of Jürgen Voller. We meet this character back in the opening flashback to see him learning of the ancient dial after trying to obtain the Lance of Longinus and discovering that it was a fake, and then has a run-in with Indy and takes a cooling tower to the face that somehow does not scar him or kill him. Like, can we just look at this clip here and tell me how this guy survived? Like, how? Anyway, when we find him in the present, he has become a lead scientist for NASA, helping to get those astronauts into space and get them on the moon. But he has some other nefarious means as he continues to pursue the dial and get it back and find the remaining half of said piece, which is Archimedes' dial, if you remember what the name is, and will use his charm and nefarious means to get to where he is for his ultimate plan. I feel like it's the feeling of an evil antagonist. It's not overly cartoonishly evil, but more of someone that is kind of one step ahead of knowing what the best plan of action is. I think he fits the tone and character well, as Mikkelsen is an excellent actor for really getting into a character, for the most part, or, where I can work. And for the most case, I enjoy his villain role. Sure, it's kind of a little underused a bit, like it kind of dots around where like we see in the beginning, we see a little bit of the start of the whole adventure, then like he disappears for a bit, we see him in the parrot, and then they just kind of back and forth from. But it happens a lot of time with movies. Now for a character that I wish had a little bit more of a screen presence is too, I would say the likes of Toby Jones's character of Helena's father, Basil Shaw. Most we see with the character is in the very beginning of the film in the opening flashback, as he finds himself captured and needing to be rescued from the train, and in the process will learn of the dial and send him on a journey of discovery and the secrets to hold what power can come from it, and lead him to become completely mad and die in the process of learning the secrets. Basil is kind of a decent character that nearly drives himself to death for years trying to find the answer to the dial's secrets, and we never see more of him after the opening scenes. We probably get like one more scene after this, and I wish he got a little bit more of him in the film. Maybe they could have worked it into like the three of them go on a journey together, but I guess they couldn't figure it out, But I guess it just got lost in the writings, but I still think he's an alright character that I wish had more presence. So on the likes of the characters that we will meet when we're on the adventure to find it out, we meet the younger companion of Helena in the form of Teddy. Now Teddy is a form of a bit of a swindler, someone who will have a method of making a bit of a quick buck, and him and Helena have worked a deal over the years that she has visited the country where he's from. I think it's Maripol, I might be wrong. It's also seen he's learning all the ways of learning to be a pilot with minimal experience and may come in handy down the line. Personally, I can take or leave this character in this. Not that he's a bad character or actor, he does a very well job. He's a pretty decently good job in this. I feel that they probably want a little bit more of a short round character again, but doesn't have the same emotional connection we would get with that character. And I believe from what I've seen from behind the scenes footage, they were going to plan to get him in this, but I'm guessing something happened down the line. It's not the level of being in a lot of it, and he's overall tolerable, so just kind of a case I just feel like they're trying to do a bit of a short round, but that's my guess. The last of the cast I can give a little bit of a discussion is with the ship captain of Ronaldo, who's played by Antonio Banderas. We meet the character a little over an hour into the movie and will be the one that helps us get to the trio out to the middle of the ocean and finding a clue to the whereabouts of the ancient treasure. I feel there is like a sense with this character there would be a lot more of a connection with him and Hindi, but it feels like there's a lot more to him that could have been shown. As is the case, he's not used heavily in the film, but I enjoy the little presence that he has, and when they're on the ship is when we see some nice little moments, and well, I think they could have been in it more. I enjoy the amount of time that they appeared in the film, so like probably case more instance they want to focus on Indy and all that stuff, so I get it. As on the basis of the other characters that appear in the film, they're not much to really delve into with the other characters besides the the main group. Most of them are really just the hired goons, with the two main henchmen of Yorkin being expendable and the hotshot, and then there's a giant, big hulking figure of a man that would crush a skull with one hand. And they're fine. Not much I can really give on them anyway. Indy's wife, Marion, and adult son, Mutt, are only really mentioned into this until the very end of the film and don't add too much substance to the story, and it's kind of member berry. They delve a little bit with some of them in there, here and there. The only other character that I can make some mention of appearances with an extended cameo was with, Salah, who helps Indy get away from a rough situation and was willing to risk his life again to go with him to find a new treasure. I do like seeing him again after his absence from the previous films. I enjoy the feeling of seeing him. It would have been nice to see, him join the journey in some capacity, but it was worth it. I think in the capacity he's fine. But overall, I find the mix of the characters in this film to be decent. Like, it's some underused at best. I understand it likes the cast a good focus towards the main two of Indy and Helena, but there is a fair amount of presence with them, which is a good thing. The villain could be in a little more, but works as much as they can have in mind with a character. Their character appearances feel either not needed as much or could appeal a little extra bit of screen time presence, but I think for what it's worth, the characters are watchable and entertaining and do help move the story along well enough for my own focus of things. So to give a score on the characters, I'm looking around a 6 to a 7. So given the case of this series being a continuous adventure, it is expected that we will be seeing a lot of different vistas and locations of a worldwide exploration, from temples and jungles to cities and ancient pasts. It's always nice to see some of the vast locales and places that they will explore, to see the ancient treasure that they will come across, and it's the same here with all the world building and design of some of the deep ancient pasts and mystery scene, the temples and cities they explore in the film, from the hustle and bustle, the space race fever in the 1960s New York, the small cart chase in Tangier, or even the train escape in the French Alps back at the beginning of the film. It has a lot of interesting approaches and looks to the world adventurers out to obtain some treasure. Like, it builds on the world, and it's a nice appealing to see some vistas and explorations. Also, delving into this is talking a little on one aspect that I was a discussion point initially back when this film was coming out. That's the concept of the CGI de-aging of Harrison Ford to make him look like he did back in the original trilogy for the opening scene, and some were concerned of it being an uncanny valley type, but I think it sort of borders on it in this movie, but it's not the case that it's too bad. At one point, it does look like it's done well and is not a bad visual aesthetic, and in case they do it mainly at night, which is usually an indication where they hide most of the visual hiccups. Usually kind of case, if you're going to have like a lot of visual problems, it's at night, and that's where they hide all like the noticeable instances. If it's lit up, you're fucked. Sure, there is some moments where it looks a bit odd, mainly with some wide shots and a little bit with the voice, because he's supposed to be younger, but he sounds like he is now. But I think it's not too bad of a job, and they did it for it all. And in most cases, I can say the likes of the visual adventure mixed with everything works out well in the end. So to give a quick score on presentation, I'm thinking around a 7 to an 8. It's good with the presentation stuff. CGI is alright, could have been better. Runtime is probably a little factor, but I'll get into the critiques later.
Okie dokie, Dr. Jones, hold on to your potato!
So this next section, I'm going to keep it brief in and of itself, but I do find the writing of this film not that bad. It's decent. It's not going to go over the top of crazy analogies. It feels a little more nuanced in keeping the writing and script straightforward. The writer of this is David Coop, who wrote the previous entry of Crystal Skull, as well as other Spielberg-based projects like, the original two Jurassic Park films. And he's currently working on that fourth one with Scarlett Johansson. And he knows it likes to keep the flow focused on characters as well as expanding on the lore of ancient artifacts. The past as well has a bit of light humor in there as well that works for the most part. There's a bit of flatline ones there as well, but overall I think it's fine enough of a dialogue in the film itself. In all case, could have been a whole lot worse for dialogue, but does not fit the time frame, but it's fine enough. So score wise in this one, 7.5. I think in the case honestly it's modestly okay, good score in the writing. It's not terrible, so give that. Of course, the last one I'll give a little section to before I get to critiques and issues is, of course, we're going to have to chat about the music, because it is, of course, coming from the man, the legend, John Williams, who has returned to score for the 5th film in the series. And this was supposed to be his final film that he was going to score for before he retires, but it doesn't seem to be the case he's doing that anymore. And he's done it for every film of this series, and, and of course, it was nominated for an Oscar last year, but it's kind of a case where, yeah, it's great score, but like in the case instance, like there was one or two other better like musical scores like Spider-Verse that I would probably put over that one. I think a lot of people were saying that as well. I think I talked about it in my Oscar predictions one as well. And in all instance of what it's worth, his score for these movies are always great. As someone who has been in the industry for many years, and in all case, I always enjoyed listening to the classics as well as some new tracks. I think the only one I really know is Helena's theme. That's most I know. That was like the first one they veiled for this movie. Sure, it could be a little better with a bit more new tracks and stuff to it, but it's a fine balance, so I'm not going to complain about that front too much. But the score-wise, I'm giving it an A. I just like the score for these movies. Indiana Jones was a great one, like that. Yeah, that kind of score. Always great scoring with this one.
Why did it have to be snakes?
Now, of course, like all of my thoughts and reviews, I'd give it at best I kind of giving all of my issues and complaints, as well as the praises, and try and give a breakdown of all of them in here. And I will do my best to summarize all the issues I have with this particular film. So, let's start with story. This comes down to the likes of some of the scope feeling not overly grand compared to the likes of the original trilogy, but it's very minor aspects of the whole ordeal. I get from the age and all that the main lead can be a factor to the whole aesthetic. It's like, they can't go too over the top because like this dude's in his 80s. We do that, we'll kill him. But it's not too bad in a sense. Some elements make sense and some I feel they could have worked other elements into it, but overall it's not a major issue of a slightly reduced scope and turned out entertaining the end. Right, next, characters. This comes down to the element of certain characters that should have had a bit more screen time, or maybe the case of including some others in some way to fit the narrative a bit more for feeling an ideal aspect of the project. If I do know from what I've saw in the past and recently online, as I've mentioned, it looked like a certain fan favorite from the original trilogy was supposed to make his return in this movie, and would have been cool to see them all this time, and I'll probably show here what this item is. But to find out what they've been up to since like their last appearance and joining the adventure, but I get some issues with connecting to the other characters and probably scheduling conflicts with this with the lead they were going to get back for this was probably a factor, so I can understand things change over time with like this script and everything like that. But in most cases, it is with certain characters that would benefit with a bit more screen time, some kind of a bit more underused a bit, but that's kind of the aesthetic on that one. So on to presentation. This comes into the effect of the likes of some minor issues with the visual effects that it can be noticeable of looking a little off, which is not too much on the likes of the film anyway, and mostly more in the opening action sequence. Some of the settings and locales feel a bit too samey in some areas, but it's not too much of a hassle kind of thing because they breeze by in quick a fair bit amount. I feel one of the big issues is a little bit with the runtime. The film clocks in at just under 2.5 hours, and in that case you could trim a small bit of the time off with like certain elements that could fix a little pacing problems, but I'd say there are some elements that make it flow better and not be a slow dull scenes in there kind of thing. But like there's some minor ones, but I think they help advance the plot a bit, but not. There's probably a few you can probably trim out. Other one then is writing. Some elements of the writing can feel a bit forced or trying some humor here and there. A bit of the context of the treasure and secret can feel a little convoluted here sometimes, or they don't really delve into it too much. And it can feel all over the place some points, but it's not to the level that it becomes ingraining on the whole ordeal, so just bear with that aspect. And the last area is, of course, music. This is just a minor complaint with the likes of the music that it would be appealing to hear a few more new tracks with the classics as it is. It's still great to hear the whole soundtrack and stuff, and John Williams always really kills it with his scores. And there is other elements to it from the past, but a few new tracks would probably benefit the music for this, given that case it's a new film, you have a lot more new stuff to it. But I probably might need to look more into the actual soundtrack for this. But overall, there are just some small points that bring down the score in each section, but it happens with every project or film that there's just some issues at the point. It could be better or fixed, but it happens.
That belongs in a museum!
Okay, so overall the series of Indiana Jones started as a concept adventure with a big star. It went quiet for about 2 decades after the TV series and the trilogy, and came back with a mixed array of where we are now, with a final entry that feels like a, to me, satisfactory concluding swan song to the treasure hunting archaeologist. Is it the best one in the series? No, I still think 1 or 3 is the better one, or just the original trilogy is better, but I see it as a close follow-up to those series highs, with some issues sprinkled in between, and even the case of the previous low points I still enjoy now and again. Like, it's still the case, I still enjoy Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I don't find it terrible. It's messy, it's a joke of a film, but, you know, it's fine. In general, I think for the adventure that it's in it, for the most part, it feels like a satisfactory conclusion to a 40-plus-year-old series that could ride off now into the sunset with a satisfying conclusion of adventure, mystery, treasure, and punching Nazis in the face, and that the series in and of itself should be in the museum remembered for many years to come. This series should be in a museum! But in the case to give the final scores for this movie, so on story-wise, I gave it a 7. Characters, I was giving a 6 to a 7. Presentation, I have a 7 to an 8. Writing, I have a 7 to 7.5. And music, I gave a score of 8. So out of 50, we're looking at a score of around 35 to 37.5 out of 50, or around a 70 to 75%, which is not bad. That's like essentially a B-, so fair play in this instance. But I hope you enjoy listening to what I have to say on my own opinions on the recent Indiana Jones film. I know that my opinion probably is going to make no sense, it's probably all over the place, but it will probably not be the same as everyone else's, but you don't have to take my own word, and you can have your own opinions on things too, of course. This is just me wanting to ramble about media of always, you know. You know me. You've seen like the 90+ videos on my channel. This is basically that. But it's just my own. And no, a lot of people know about it anyway. But let me know down below on your own thoughts on this movie. And I would like to know, did you like the movie? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Were you indifferent about it? Which is your favorite in the series? Let me know your reasons why down below, and let's discuss them there. I'd love to have an open conversation with anyone who's seen this movie. But as always, I hope you all enjoyed listening to my ramblings of a review. And of course, you all stay being wonderful people and have a great day every day, doing many great things, and to keep being you, because no one else can do what you do. Now, I'm off to ride into the sunset, and I'll see you in the next video. So, take care everyone, and goodbye.